I'm Lily Thompson, 26 years old, standing in the middle of my bustling solo art exhibition. The gallery is filled with people, their voices a symphony of admiration for my work. But my mind drifts back to a year ago, to a night that was the darkest of my life and yet the catalyst for everything I've achieved today. I was sitting alone at the swankiest restaurant in town, the weight of the world on my shoulders as I stared at a $15,000 bill I couldn't pay. My hands trembled as I read the note from my parents. "Let's see how you handle this, Lily. Consider it a life lesson." They thought they were teaching me responsibility, but they'd crossed a line. Growing up in the Thompson household was like living in a gilded cage. My parents, Victor and Isabella Thompson, were prominent figures in the corporate world. They'd built their business empire from the ground up, and they expected nothing but perfection from me. Every A on my report card was met with a simple nod, while any hint of failure was met with disappointment and lectures. I always had a passion for art, but my parents saw it as a frivolous pursuit. In high school, despite having a stellar academic record and offers from top-tier business schools, I made the decision to attend the San Francisco Art Institute. My father scoffed at the idea, calling it a waste of my potential. My mother's silence was just as painful, a silent disapproval that hung in the air. Art school was a breath of fresh air. For the first time, I was free to express myself. But financial constraints meant I still had to rely on my parents for tuition. They never let me forget it, constantly reminding me that they were making a reluctant investment in my hobby. After graduation, I landed a job at a small art gallery. I was finally making it on my own terms, or so I thought. The gallery hit hard times, and as the newest employee, I was the first to go. With rent due and my savings depleted, I had no choice but to move back home at 26. My parents' response was a mix of superiority and conditional support. "Of course, you can stay with us," my mother said over the phone, "but you'll have to follow our rules." And just like that, the old patterns emerged. Curfews, constant check-ins, and endless discussions about getting a real job. 3 months later, my father announced we'd be having dinner at Le Chateau, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. We were dining with some of his business associates. The drive there was tense, with my mother critiquing my appearance every few minutes. When we arrived, the restaurant was a vision of luxury. Crystal chandeliers, live music, and well-dressed patrons. I felt out of place, even in my nicest dress. The menu prices were astronomical, and as the others ordered with confidence, I picked the least expensive items I could find. Throughout the meal, I tried to join the conversation, but I was constantly brushed aside. Then, halfway through the main course, my parents and their friends suddenly got up. "We have to take this call," my father said, and they left me alone at the table. As minutes turned into hours, I started to panic. I sent texts, made calls, but there was no response. Then the server brought the bill, along with a note from my father. I felt the world spin as I realized what they'd done. I tried to call my best friend, Mia. She could only offer me a small amount of money, nowhere near enough to cover the bill. I was trapped, just as my parents had planned. Desperate, I showed the restaurant manager, Henry, my portfolio. To my surprise, he was genuinely interested in my work. He told me his brother, Ethan, owned a small gallery that focused on emerging artists. He called Ethan, and hope flickered within me. While waiting for Ethan, an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Harris, approached me. They'd overheard my situation and were appalled by my parents' actions. They offered me a place to stay at their guest house until I got back on my feet. Ethan arrived and was impressed by my work. He bought 2 of my pieces, and the restaurant management, after some negotiation, reduced the bill by 20%. The Harrises covered the remaining balance, on the condition that I didn't go back to my parents that night. I called my parents when the bill was settled. My father's smug voice on the other end asked if I'd learned my lesson. I told him I had, but not the lesson he intended. I sold my art, I said, and I was done with their control. Ethan offered me a part-time job at his gallery, which included studio space. It was a new beginning. I started to build my life from scratch, away from my parents' shadow. In the months that followed, I sold more of my work, and Ethan featured my urban landscape series in a group show. It caught the attention of local art critics, and my reputation began to grow. 6 months later, Ethan offered me this solo exhibition. The opening night coincided with the anniversary of that fateful dinner. And there, in the middle of all this success, my parents walked in. They looked at my work, and my father said, "These are quite impressive, Lily." But I could see through his words. It was too little, too late. I told them that I was building my own life, and if they wanted to be a part of it, it had to be on my terms. Now, as the exhibition comes to an end, I look around at the people who've supported me, at the art that's become my voice. I've learned that true success comes from being true to myself, and sometimes the worst moments in life can lead to the greatest transformations. Have you ever had someone's cruel action lead to your greatest growth? Share your stories in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of overcoming life's unexpected challenges. Thank you for joining me on this journey from abandonment to empowerment.